What's going on, everybody? C4, and today I just cracked myself a nice little C4 Wiser. Actually, it's a Miller Lite, and I figured let's talk about some combine results and get to some 2.0 rankings. And we're gonna be doing we're doing linebackers. For the last video, we did defensive ends and defensive tackles. I mean, those are two separate videos, but those are the last position groups. And the next logical step is to talk about the linebackers. And I only really am going to talk about one true outside linebacker because there is that gray area if a guy's outside linebacker, defensive end, and we pretty much talked about those guys at the the defensive end edge rusher video. So there's only one guy we're going to talk about. So technically there's 6 prospects we will be talking about, but realistically it's going to be top 5 inside linebackers and really one edge rusher, maybe 2 edge rushers depending on how you classify one of the players we're going to talk about. So for outside linebacker, I'm only talking about one guy, but the original rankings we had in 1.0, at number 5 we had JoJo Joe Mathis, 4 was Hassan Reddick, 3 was Ryan Anderson, 2 was Charles Harris, and 1 was TJ Watt. And we're only going to really mention one. At number 6 is TJ Watt from Wisconsin. 6'4", 252 pounds, the brother of JJ Watt. I personally, people are going around on Twitter and stuff saying he actually had himself a decent combine. 4'6", 40, 21 on the bench press. I personally, maybe just because of the Watt lineage and the genetics, I thought he was gonna be a little bit freakier. I mean, he did test fairly well and was one of the best in terms of the jumping and explosive drills. Maybe it was just the lower bench press, and I thought he'd get a 4.5, high 4, maybe like a 10, shave off 10 hundredths of a second or whatever the fuck, however that works, to make it a 4.59 40 or something like that. But still, was a solid combine from him. Pro comparison was on NFL.com they had Paul Kruger, longtime Cleveland Brown. I see a lot of Clay Matthews in him. I think in terms of you could fit him into a middle linebacker role like they do and did with Clay Matthews with Green Bay, but certainly his strength will be as an outside linebacker. I think he could probably athletic and maybe not. I don't know. He's a 3-4 outside linebacker, probably could get away playing 4-3 outside linebacker, but with the transition of outside linebackers and 4-3s now being the burners, you need the fast, elite Deion Jones type, even though Deion Jones plays inside. But you know what I'm saying, those guys that can really maintain speed with slot wide receivers if they need to, and more importantly, the big athletic, freakily tight ends. I think TJ Watt probably is best suited for a 3-4 outside linebacker gig. 2016 stats, he had 63 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, and 11.5 sacks. So a big year last year with Wisconsin, and he's really the notable true outside linebacker that we're really going to talk about because everyone else was pretty much touched on in the defensive end / edge rusher video. So without further ado, we're going to be jumping into the now 5 inside linebacker rankings 2.0. The 1.0 rankings at number 5 we had Anthony Walker Jr. Number 4 is Raekwon McMillan. Number 3 was Jared Davis. Number 2 was Zak Cunningham. And number 1 was Rubin Foster. A pretty big change here, I would say, for the most part, in what we did from the original. Number 5, we're going with Raekwon McMillan from Ohio State, 6'2", 240 pounds. Realistically, number 5 and number 4 are tied, and it depends really what you're looking for. I think both have strength, both have weakness, so it's really a personal toss-up. Maybe it's my Ohio State hatred, which is what makes him really, like I said, it's 5A, 5B. So I'm just gonna, make it so it seems like he's worse, he's lower because it's from Ohio State. Maybe that's what it is. But realistically, I think they're on a pretty even playing field right now. But Raekwon McMillan, number 5. His combine stats, as Pro Comparison NFL Network gave him, is Mason Foster of the Washington Redskins, who's, he's not bad. He's definitely a starter in the league. But just the thing with Raekwon McMillan is very, very inconsistent tape. And I think the same goes for the guy we're going to talk about in just one second. And I don't know if Raekwon McMillan is a day one starter, but certainly if he can get in a rotational scheme, that would be nice for him. At the combine, 4'6", 140, and 23 on the bench press, so had a very good combine. A lot of beat reporters are saying that he was one of the guys that won the day at the combine. Definitely didn't have a bad one. His career stats at Ohio State, 275 tackles, 8 and 6 sacks. Big thumper type guy, big motherfucker that's downhill, Denzel Perryman-esque. Definitely a little bit better athletic. I mean, Perryman had a pretty shit 40 time. But I think Raekwon McMillan definitely would need to go to a 4-3 scheme. I don't think he's that's maybe cutting him short. That 4-6-1 teams may be seeing he could play a little bit of a 3-4 middle linebacker, but I think he's best as a 4-3 Sam, which is they do agree with that on most scouting sites, be it CBS or NFL.com. But he does have some issues, and his tape is incredibly inconsistent, so I don't think a team that needs a starter at linebacker. I think he'll be a great value pick in the back end of the second round. Go number 4 is going to be Zak Cunningham from the University of Vanderbilt, 6'3", 234 pounds. Again, like Raekwon McMillan. So many good things, and then you look at the play, and it looks like the next drive, there'll be so many bad things. Like missed tackles like a motherfucker. I think his range is incredible. He might have the best sideline-to-sideline range outside of the number 1, who's pretty much a consensus number 1 right now. But his pro comparison is Alec Ogletree of the... what the fuck does Ogletree play for? Yeah, the Rams. The Rams of formerly St. Louis, now of Los Angeles. Ran a 4.67 at the combine, put up 15 on the bench press. Everyone knew he wasn't really going to put up a big bench press time because he's big, gangly, almost 35-inch arms. But I personally thought he'd run a little bit faster because from sideline coverage ability, I thought honestly he was one of the best in college last year. Incredibly productive career with the University of Vanderbilt. It seemed like almost every other week he was putting up 16, 17 tackles. He's a tackle machine, and then again his mechanics are bad. He seems a lot, for Eagle fans that watch this video, a lot of the mistakes Michael Kendricks makes you can see with Zak Cunningham. The missed tackles, he's just not that strong, and it kind of sucks for him. But I think for the most part, if you can get him into an off-season training program and work on his mechanics slightly, you're going to have a great linebacker. I'm very high on Zak Cunningham. Big fan of him, big fan of him because, the Gators usually beat up on him, and he was literally the best player on the field for Vandy when they were playing. But the missed tackles kind of sucks him a little bit, but I definitely think he will be a good fit for a 4-3 defense and certainly can be a weak side linebacker. Going to number 3, pretty much number 3, 2, and 1, I think can all be day 1 starters. For number 3, we're going Jarrad Davis from the University of Florida, 6'1", 240 pounds. He's a monster. I don't really have a pro comparison from him as a Gator fan because I think he's his own man. All right, I think he's his own man. NFL.com gave him Shaq Thompson. What? No, he's not Shaq Thompson at all. There's zero similarities between what Shaq Thompson did at Washington and what Jarrad Davis did for Florida last year. He is like, it's incredibly high evaluation I'm going to give him. But for what he was in Florida's defense, Ray Lewis, man, he was the rah-rah. He was the leader of that defense. Fierce tackle. You did not want to go over the middle. He would give you a shot. He could rush the passer, which is an incredibly underrated trait for him. Pretty much the only issue why Jarrad Davis is not my number 2 linebacker is injuries. He struggled to stay on the field a lot. Not necessarily big, long injuries, but it seemed like he would get pulled out of games. He wouldn't finish games a lot because just like maybe something nagging or he picks up a stinger and stuff. I don't know if it's just bad luck, but as a Gator fan, man, Davis is a beast, and once he can stay healthy, there's been a pretty bad line of linebackers coming out of Florida the last couple of years. John Bostic kind of sucked. I mean, Brandon Spikes was good, but then he fell the fuck off. Just off the top of my fucking head, I can't think of a whole bunch. But his career stats at the University of Florida: 201 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, and 5.5 sacks. I think Davis I've seen him in a couple mock drafts in the first round. I think he will be a top half, middle, second round guy. But I think for sure if he can come in healthy for training camp. I don't know if his plan is to run at the Florida Pro Day or not because he didn't really participate. I don't even think he went to the combine. I think he's gonna need to do that because there's so much, a little bit worry about his athleticism, especially if you're fucking pro competent Shaq Thompson. Shaq Thompson is like Jabril Peppers light, where he's fucking, where the hell is he going to play a little bit of offense, a little bit of defense, whereas he's an old school, even though he's not 250 pounds like the old school linebackers from the early 2000s and shit, he is a big-time thumper, and I think he is a phenomenal playmaker, and he can also, get involved on special teams. He's a good special teamer for Florida. But I think, where everyone disappointed this year at the Combine from the University of Florida, from Caleb Brantley to Tease Tabor, Quincy Wilson wasn't great. I think Jarrad Davis has a chance to be the best Florida Gator from this year's draft class, easily. Then number 2 is a guy that maybe had one of the biggest combine performances out of anyone, and no one really knows where to place him. He kind of practiced with the defensive lineman, which is where he did his combine. But Mike Mayock and myself included, he's a middle linebacker. They put him at the Senior Bowl at middle linebacker. He looks like a middle linebacker, and that's Hassan Riddick from Temple, 6'1", 237 pounds. The pro comp on NFL.com they gave him was Ryan Shazier. I like to think he's a better tackler. Shazier, that was pretty much his only thing, was he's undersized coming out of Ohio State. I think Riddick, definitely is. Riddick's probably 10, 15 pounds heavier than Shazier was at the Combine. But he was a warrior, man. 4'5", 240, 24 on the bench press, 36.5-inch vertical. I mean, Just a fucking, not even a combine warrior. Look at his tape. That was the best thing. You want to say combine warrior. Usually the combine warrior tanks comes to a guy that wasn't really productive in college and then tests out the park. He was uber productive at Temple and then he tests out the park. So I think he earned himself a lot of money here at the combine. He is going to be a freak. I was kind of thinking he'd be a late end first rounder / second round pick. I think he's totally right now, especially if he considers and starts in an interview, says that he can be a middle linebacker or just anywhere on a linebacking core. First round pick, as high as Miami, man. I think Riddick is made himself a fuck ton of money. In 2016, his stats with Temple, 65 tackles, 22.5 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks. So he can set the edge. He can rush the passer. He can stop the running backs. And he can drop back into coverage. I won't think, obviously now this new age of linebacker, you want them to be able to cover slot wide receivers to help the safeties out. But I think for a tight, maybe that's a little too big of a jump, but covering tight ends and covering running backs out the backfield, I think Riddick can do that. And I firmly believe that he is going to be a great pro in the NFL, and I could see him going as high as middle of the first round. He's a beast. But the number one middle linebacker is a guy that got sent home after some questionable behavior, I would say, at a hospital. But, the more you looked into that, I don't really want to make that a big part of this video, but the more you look into it, the more it looks like it was justified. I guess you could say justified. Obviously, being in that spotlight, it's never a smart thing to get sent home. But you can understand the frustration that he was getting. Basically, it seemed like we'll get into it. Basically, it seemed like the doctors were taking their good old fucking time while he was missing team meetings, and he just got frustrated with how lackadaisical they were doing it. I think who was it? Ian Rappaport said that he talked to a couple GMs and a couple evaluators stuff, and they said it didn't affect his draft stock at all. So I don't think there's going to be any drop or anything like that because he missed out on the combine. He's going to have his pro day. He's going to have all that stuff at the interviews at the University of Alabama, and he will test out of the park. And the number one linebacker, all that said, is Rubin Foster from the University of Alabama, 6'1", 230 pounds is probably where he's going to weigh in at. Pro comparison from him is Bobby Wagner. I think Mike Mayock compared him to Luke Kuechly. I think you may want to pump the brakes on that a little bit, whereas Rubin Foster, he's a little bit undersized, and I think off the field issues and stuff like that, I don't want to hold what happened against him, but it is, it can raise questions like, is this what if he gets put, we drafted a team and he gets put in a fucking an annoying situation. Is he gonna, cost us some games and do something stupid? So I guess that could be in the back of the mind. But yeah, did not participate in the combine, got sent home. But his stats in the career at University of Alabama: 211 tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, phenomenal range, big time hitter for only being 229 pounds. He was great speed, tough. Literally, he's your good Alabama linebacker. Alabama has phenomenal linebackers. I think he's the most talented Alabama linebacker since Donta Hightower. And that's not really overshadowing C.J. Mosley, but I would put Rubin Foster ahead of C.J. Mosley when they're coming out. But, I mean, just another great player in the great line of phenomenal Alabama linebackers. And I think, he's a will. He's an absolute will, can drop back into coverage, and I think he's going to have a great pro career and should still go, first 15 picks. So there you have it, guys. Those are we'll give the awards too before we jump out of this. So for the most NFL ready, I'm going Rubin Foster. Highest potential, Zak Cunningham, if he can work on the mechanics and drop the missed tackles. He's a freak. And Rubin Foster, obviously. For my sleeper pick, it's Jalen Reeves-Maybin. Highest bunch potential is Alex Anzalone. As a Gator fan, that guy cannot stay fucking healthy. And, he's on top 5 linebacker list. He's seen coming at number 5, I think, on Mike Mayock. Top list for everyone else there. Yeah, I don't see it. I think he's going to struggle finding his ability to stay on the field, injury prone. And for the player that helped him most at the combine, it's Hassan Riddick. He tested out of the park, and I'd say if you're risking the top 5 combine performances from this year, Riddick would certainly make that list. So there you go, guys. If you agree or disagree with the rankings, let me know in the comment section below. If this is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, and smash the like button if you enjoyed it. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace